U.S. Marshals service employees have alleged racism for decades, and now their case may finally be heard. A class action discrimination case that goes back some 27 years has finally made its way before the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission. And as RT correspondent Paxton Boyd explains, thousands could have a stake here. So Paxton, what more can you tell us?
Yeah, Manila, the end could be near for a decades-long class action lawsuit that bears the name of Matthew Fogg. He's a man that spent about 13 years fighting to prove that racism derailed his career at the United States Marshals Service. In 1998, jurors decided that Fogg was up against what a judge called a hostile work environment for black employees. Now, take a look at parts of this complaint filed against the Marshals Service in which Fogg says discrimination led him to seek treatment for stress. Now, in that same document, he says that the Marshals Service even ordered him back to work after he went on leave because of that stress. Now, Fogg says he went to the ER for his blood pressure. It spiked literally on the day he returned to work. And now that class action that affects more than 10,000 people could be moving towards the finish line. It alleges that the Marshals Service, one of the country's oldest law enforcement agencies that protects courthouses, transports prisoners, shields witnesses, and tracks down fugitives, has done little to confront decades of discrimination. A judge for the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission could soon hear the evidence, but it hasn't come easy. After years of delay, attorneys say that many class members left the agency. Some are ailing and unable to testify, and others have died. Now, take a look at some of the complaints listed in this lawsuit. It alleges discrimination against African American employees, in part by canceling positions that they applied for. It says one employee's non-African American colleagues, quote, frequently used racial slurs. And according to a court transcript, a judge spoke about a code of silence as she sentenced a white former deputy marshal to prison in 2008 for beating a handcuffed black prisoner. Now, this is not the only instance of racial bias when it comes to the American justice system. Thousands of people are leaving federal prison this month thanks to a new law called the First Step Act, which allows them to win early release by taking part in programs meant to ease their return back into society. But racial disparities are putting minorities at a disadvantage. The Justice Department reporting that its algorithmic tool used to determine the risk that a person would return to crime after leaving prison has produced uneven results. Manila.
Paxton Boyd in the newsroom, thank you. The man behind the case, Matthew Fogg, former Chief Deputy U.S. Marshal. He is here. Matthew, first, quickly get us up to speed with what's happening with this case that you've been chipping away at for nearly 30 years.
That's correct. That's correct. It shows you the longevity of racism, and it definitely, when you're talking about law enforcement, all the impact, all the people that it has impacted, not just the marshals, but the people we go after, the goods and services we provide, the racism, the disparate impact on who we lock up and so forth. But the reality of it is that, yes, I filed this complaint back in 1994. I had my own complaint going since 1985. The longevity of it all, I went to federal court. In my particular case, won the case, but at the same time, the government still turned around and came after me again. Basically sick the IRS on me, just so many things. In the meantime, all the other black employees who were experiencing the same type of racial problems that I was having, it's been ongoing and continuing. And it's been a motto of the Marshal Service is, we can just outlast them. We just let this thing drag on and on and on to where finally we got news in the Washington Post, and we got some great news on it that shows that the racial disparities and impact is just as pervasive now as it was 20-something years ago.
Yeah, and so obviously there's some renewed interest in this case because a younger generation of marshals are blowing the whistle again, citing exactly the same stuff that you did from the 90s. Does that then show that nothing has really been done since then?
Absolutely, yes. And the thing is, it goes back, it makes me think about it. In my case, when I went to federal trial, I had a guy who was a director of the Marshal Service, a guy named Michael K. Moore. He impacted my promotion process, ruined it, just destroyed it. The jury found him to be a discriminating official. This is a federal judge. He's now the chief judge of the Southern District of Miami. He's on the bench. And can you imagine all the lives he has affected over all of those years? And we can just go on and on talking about promotions and so forth, that where people's lives have been just completely destroyed. And a lot of people, as it is mentioned, there's those who have died, those who just didn't want to fight anymore.
Yeah.
I thank God that I had the stamina to be where I am today, to continue to push this case forward.
Absolutely. And I'm so glad to know you and see you through all these years fighting this injustice that's happened to not only you, but a multitude of people in your former employment. Now, Matthew, the U.S. DOJ denies that there's any systemic or institutional methods at the Marshal Service that discriminates against minorities, similar to other law enforcement agencies across this country. There are departments across the country that point to Black, brown, Asian folks, women, all in leadership positions to justify that argument. So to that, you say what?
Right behind me, Bigots with Badges, front page of the New York Post in 1997. If you go to my website, bigotswithbadges.com, I got a book coming out, Bigots with Badges. It breaks it down and it shows how culturally this is a culture thing. It's just not a one-time moment thing. This is about Black lives do matter, but they don't matter in the U.S. Marshal Service. And its longevity with the U.S. Department of Justice, and a lot of lives have been destroyed and hurt because of this, and we're still trying to move forward into the discovery and a hearing to where we can have a hearing. But this is just outrageous when you look at the impact over the years.
Now, switching gears here to the folks that are locked up, Matthew, this sort of racism, may not be written in official language by the agencies, but based on numerous accounts by officers, marshals, FBI agents, et cetera, the like you said, is there. And they say it goes beyond how they were treated as colleagues, but it trickles down to those who are incarcerated as well, especially with this DOJ algorithm called Pattern, which is a risk assessment program used to identify federal inmates who could be up for early release as part of that 2018 First Step Act. They say this disproportionately favors white inmates because it takes into account stuff like educational background, even where the inmate grew up, but it does rightfully take into account their full criminal history. What case is there to be made about a computer algorithm being racist?
Well, again, now when you start to talking about computers, you can, whatever data you enter into that computer, that's what that computer is going to process. So the bottom line, it comes down to, if you've got racism, which brings the culture of integrity into play, which says this is a threat to national security. Bottom line is, whatever we are involved with as a U.S. Department of Justice, as a culture that is racism, it's going to affect, there's going to be disparate impact on whatever we do. So yes, if those algorithms indicate that where white folks are going to be released, first thing is, we know 80% of the people that were arrested were people of color. We, as Black U.S. Marshals, was expected to go out and lock up people of color disproportionate from those that were white. So we have an ongoing algorithm that shows racial disparities across the board, and they will continue to come out.
Yeah, and that is just one example. Our friend Matthew Fogg, I'm so happy for this news for you. We will be in touch and follow your case.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.